This is the Laser Tag Phoenix LTX. These come typically in a set of two, one blue, one gold. They both do the same thing. This is a great system that I've been using for quite a long time. Originally released in 2008 under the Tiger Electronics name. They were later released under Hasbro with the NERF brand on here, but they both work the same, aside from one little extra feature you get with the old Tiger stuff. Plus the Tiger Electronics stuff featured additional add-ons, which I'll show you here in a second. Basic overview of the blaster's functions are pretty simple, even though there's a lot that it can do. You have a trigger up here. You're aiming for these red domes up here. You'll notice I'm not wearing a sensor with this review. That's because everything's on the tagger. There's a couple pros and cons to that as well. You're shooting from here, obviously. Forward of the trigger, you have a shields button that you can press and hold, so that way you can defend yourself while you're under heavy fire. And then there's switches on either side of the blaster in orange that you can press forward and pop out an ammo core to reload. Every 10 shots you fire, you need to reload after that. There's an unlimited amount of reloads, but yeah, it's kind of nice to have that neat physical feature to be able to pop that back in for more ammunition. There's ammo and strength gauges on either side, and there's a couple of switches on here that you need to have set up before you start the blaster. Underneath, though, you're running off of 6 AA batteries. These two screws come out and you pop them into a core there. So this is, usually laser tag systems, at least the older ones that I've used, run with about 2 or 3 in the blaster and then another 3 for the vest, for the sensor. So it makes sense to have 6 batteries in this because it needs to be able to run everything out of one. But the switches on here are pretty simple. You have an indoor-outdoor mode. Outdoor is full power. Indoor reduces the amount of power that the sensor dome gets, so that way you're not getting a lot of reflection hits, which are typically happen indoors. So your sensitivity is a little bit less sensitive to all the reflections that you can usually get in there. You can actually use the indoor mode outdoors. You're just really hard to hit then. And then on the other side, you've got a 10 and 25 strength switch that you need to have this set before you start the match. Speaking of starting the match, your power switch is along with your team selections, which is similar to other laser tag systems. So you move this guy down here, and once you have it set on whatever team, solo, team 1 or team 2, you pull the trigger to start the 10-second countdown. There's also helpful iron sights on top of this blaster to help you make use of its excellent range. Out of the box, these are getting about 500, 600 feet pretty easily, and in daytime conditions too. The sun filtration on these is top-notch. I've yet to see any sun issues with them. But also, the beams are very well focused and can get pretty good range during the daytime too. You don't see a huge range loss during the daytime with the laser tag brand, at least from what I've been noticing. Let me power it on and show you how it works. It runs through a cycle through here. It tests the recoil pack. When you fire, this recoil pack will move, and it also rumbles to let you know when you're hit. I'm going to have it on solo mode and pull the trigger to start the 10-second countdown. Let me double check. Yep, I'm set on 10 hits now. So it's doing its countdown. I'm going to set this guy up too while I'm at it so you can have something to shoot at. I have him set to 25. Alright, so the blaster itself is fairly heavy actually because it does have 6 batteries and there's a lot going on in here.
Good luck.
Thank you. But it's also very compact. It's easy to use. You can put your hand here to kind of help support the shot. And there's also add-ons that you can add to the front and to the top rail here. You'll see these slide back to reveal little electronic contact patches in there, both on top and on bottom to accept the other accessories. But as the base blaster itself, pretty easy to use. As you're getting hit, it'll indicate your strength will start to go down on this side, and it's also showing my ammo going down as well. I must have him set to outdoor mode, which is why I can shoot over here and he's still getting hit. That's how sensitive these things are. If I make this switch to indoor mode, he's not getting nearly as many reflection shots as he was before.
Low life.
She lets you know in your last 3 hits that you have low life, but I can also press and hold the shields button. Oh. This will also flash green back here to indicate that your shields are active. But yeah, it's real easy to use. A lot of people forget about the shields until after they're dead. And then when you are dead,
You're out.
she says, "You're out." Does this little kind of powering down sound. Nothing else happens. You can't press any more buttons. They don't work anymore. And your dome stays up lit in red. So it's really clear to you and your opponents when you're tagged out of the game. You just turn off the blaster, save your batteries, wait for the next match to start, or however you set up the games. But yeah, really easy to use, really easy to explain to other players, even though there's a lot of features going on here. Usually the only thing that tends to throw people up, is the team settings. Sometimes before they start the game, they'll be set on solo mode or be set on Team 1 or Team 2 when they're supposed to be on the other one instead. And as a result, they won't be able to hit any of the people they're trying to kill and only be able to hit their teammates. So that's slightly frustrating when you're setting up matches. But it usually only happens when people aren't paying attention, which happens all the time. Because the sensor dome is on here, it means that you can get shot anytime you're trying to shoot at somebody else. What it also means, though, is whenever you turn around or every time your blaster is angled up, you're pretty much impossible to hit. So if you're running away, you don't really need to use shields because usually the blaster's in front of you and they can't hit you from behind. But also it makes games like Capture the Flag or anything like that kind of impossible to do with these systems unless you tell them to hold their blaster up in the air and be able to get hit, which is annoying. So no back sensors or extra sensors on here and no way to really get hit. It's line of sight shooting, so if they can't see the dome, they can't hit you. But at least the advantage to this is that anytime you're shooting, you should be able to be hit unless they're deliberately covering up the sensor, which violates rule number 1 for our group, which is don't be a jerk. But yeah, it's simple to use. That's really the only drawback is that you can't get hit from behind. These bright lights on the blaster make night games kind of interesting because you end up looking like a Christmas tree and everybody can see you. Even though the lights are facing back here, the reflection off your arm and onto the person is really easy to see from afar. And then also, as you're trying to aim, especially using the iron sights, unless you have other aiming apparatus on there, you're constantly getting blinded by these lights shining at you in the face, especially when you're pulling the trigger and this recoil hammer is lighting up in orange. It makes it really impossible to see at night. There's remedies to those, obviously. Speaking of remedies and upgrades and such, this is how the Phoenix LTX looked when it first came from Tiger Electronics. They probably don't show up in the video, but you can actually still see the old Tiger Electronics logos on these accessories. And by accessories, I mean that they're removable. You can add them to any blaster, regardless of the color or function. Actually, I'll put it on this gold one. This is a green dot sight. It just powers on. There's a little green dot that lights up in there that makes it easier to aim. And then you got your shot blast, which is even easier to use. You pump this, your next shot is a 3-round burst. It's not lensed, so it's a wide-angle shot, much like a shotgun would be, and it does 3 damage instead of 1. Very, very effective in close quarters combat. You don't have to worry about aiming quite as much because these blasters are incredibly accurate. It's nice and easy to attach and detach. There's a little lever here you pull down on. Blaster makes the noise to let you know that it's deactivated that feature. And you plug another one back in, and you're good to go again. Shot blasts are unlimited. You just have to pump and then fire. And then it's back to normal firing again. But very effective. Gives the blaster a little bit extra heft to it, but it's not that heavy. Just makes it a little bit longer. Very cool looking as well. This top lens is really just covering up where this original guy would come through. It doesn't have any extra magnification, so you don't get any range additions from these, but it is rather nice to have. The Phoenix LTX blasters you used to be able to get in a 2-pack with the NERF version for about $50. They have gone up, I imagine, inflation, and that it's only you can only get these on Amazon now. But they're still pretty affordable, especially considering what you're getting. I believe these were $64 or $65 to get on Amazon, and with Prime, with shipping, they're here in 2 days, which is nice. Originally, when these came out, they came with all this extra gear, including a TV module, which in 2008 was still slightly relevant. You could plug it in here to the blaster, and then plug in connections to the TV and play a solo TV game, which is kind of fun. But with all of that stuff, the sets were like $80 or almost $90. So initially, when this stuff came out, it was pretty expensive. There were extra expansions that were planned with laser tag, with the Phoenix LTX lineup for different attachments, both here and here. But the line kind of fizzled out because its initial launch wasn't as strong as they were kind of hoping. And then they just took away all the options and gave you the NERF versions. So these guys are a little bit trickier to find. You just have to go on Amazon to find them. But the base blasters themselves are great to use. Our group has been using them for several years now, and I have an armory of these, and they're pretty reliable too. The only thing that tends to go wrong with these is over time, this reload feature can get a little worn out, and you need to take apart the blaster, which you can do. There's screws still on the side of the blaster. It's not too hard to do, and just clean. Essentially, there's like plastic dust that gets stuck in there, and it doesn't want these levers don't want to go forward or release anything. But outside of that, they've been really reliable, especially for the thrashing that these seem to get. I've done birthday parties, I've done college indoor things with guys. We play every summer outdoors with these. A lot of fun to use, really easy to use, and definitely worth the money.